All right, welcome everybody to our latest Live Motocross podcast as we talk all things AMA Supercross ahead of Detroit and chat some MXGP with Jason Thomas. Obviously, firstly, thank you to everyone for listening and supporting these podcasts and the website. We really appreciate it. We'd also like to thank our sponsors for this one in Fly Racing and Firepower, starting with Fly, who continue to raise the bar for performance and design. Built with championship-proven technology, their collections are all about control, comfort and confidence on any track in any conditions. Leading the charge with the Formula S, the world's first off-road smart helmet. It's a game changer and a bold statement of Fly Racing's commitment to innovation. Ready to ride? Check out the full line at flyracing.com or your local dealers. Also follow at flyracing.global on social media and cheer for all their athletes in the SMX and MXGP World Championships. Also, big shout out to Firepower, who are obviously teamed up with Club MX and many other heavy hitters in the industry. So be sure to check them out online and on socials to see why they're so highly regarded. All right, welcome again, JT. How's life? And thanks for joining us, mate. You've just landed in Detroit, so excitement's high for another cracking round.
Yeah, all is well. I am in Detroit, as you mentioned. Just got to the hotel. You never know what you're going to get with the weather in Detroit. It's not very beautiful looking outside, but it's also not freezing cold yet either. So kind of trying to take the good with the bad. However, it is going to get much colder and windier from here. So it's going to live up to the prototypical Detroit type weekend here pretty soon, I think.
Not so good to hear, mate. Hopefully the racing on track's excellent. And just give us a little bit of a sort of a preview. What's the city like? You hear Vic's reviews about it. What's the stadium like? Obviously the track. Give us some insights on that as well, mate. So just a little bit of a precursor for the fans from your, obviously, perspective being on the inside there, mate, on the broadcast. What are we going to look forward to?
Yeah, it's, Detroit's interesting because if you go back to when we switched from Pontiac to Detroit, which is 20 years ago this year, 2006 was the first year we made the move from the Silverdome down to what is Ford Field in downtown Detroit. Pontiac was like in suburbia, kind of in the middle of nowhere, but it also wasn't like a bad thing because you were away from the chaos and just the meltdown that was happening in downtown Detroit. The early 2000s were very unkind to Detroit Metro. All of the businesses basically departed. The city was bankrupt. I think I read something about, I know I read this, I'm trying to think of the number specifically, but I'm pretty sure it was a 1.8 million person departure from Detroit itself. So what happened is you go downtown and it's just vacant buildings and houses everywhere, like literal ghost neighborhoods for miles on end. You think about how many people that is, 1.8 million to leave the city limits. It was pretty incredible. I remember the first few years just driving around looking at it. And, the movies like 8 Mile kind of depict what that scene was like, what Detroit was like, and that was even when the factories, like he worked in a vehicle factory, which all of those shut down, which is what was one of the biggest catalysts for this incredibly bad situation for Detroit. So fast forward to today, it's not Beverly Hills by any stretch of the imagination, but it's come a long way. I will give it credit. I wrote some articles. I remember writing some articles way back. This is like 2012. And I was kind of like talking about how bad it was. And people were really angry. I wasn't trying to take personal shots, but I was also being honest about the current situation downtown. But it has gotten a lot better. It went from a situation where it was very dangerous. And I don't mean like hyperbolic dangerous. I mean truly dangerous to walk downtown after dark or even during the day, really. Now it's fine. Like I don't even think twice about it. Like I would walk to dinner, no problem, no worries. Like I'll walk to the track tomorrow. I'll walk back from the track tomorrow night. Whether I'm with like a female that I'm dating at the time, like I don't have reservations anymore about the downtown area. So that's great. As far as the stadium goes, it's always been good. And it was the biggest dichotomy ever because it was like Baghdad outside the stadium. And then you'd get inside and it's this beautiful dome and brand new and just top of the line features and amenities. And you're like, this is insane, because if the people outside like waging war on each other knew what was happening inside the dome, they would break in this place to try to like hole up here because it's beautiful in here. So we're starting to get back to a place where, Detroit's not a top 10 city in America, but it is a lot better. And it's at least a little bit more comparable to what the stadium and the race is, because the race itself is top notch. Like the turnout's great. The stadium's great. The dirt is great. I have zero complaints about this race specifically. And the city's playing catch up. So kudos to, I'm sure it's a lot of civil workers, and I'm sure there's been a lot of investment from people in the Michigan, greater Michigan area to try to revitalize Detroit. And I watched this, we've talked about this on this show. I watched this firsthand happen with Indianapolis. The same thing happened where Indianapolis was a deteriorating industrial city the first time I went to it in 1997. And now it is vibrant, great place to be. Everything's brand new, great nightlife, beautiful restaurants. Like, it is amazing. And that's why they get conferences, they get NCAA tournaments, the NFL Combine is there. Like, you name a big function of other sports, and they are doing it in Indianapolis for a reason. I think that is the perfect role model for Detroit to chase. And you can kind of see it. Like, you can see it underway. I don't know if they'll ever get to that level, but it's for people ever thinking about coming to Detroit, man, it is light years from what it used to be. And now I can't really say it's a bad idea, other than you're going to get questionable weather in March. That's probably the biggest drawback now, where before I really felt like it was one of those situations where you needed to either taxi to the race and get inside and taxi out of here, or not come at all. Like, it was not a safe place to be walking around before and after the race.
Yeah, well said, mate. That's a really excellent breakdown. And you even see, watching, working in soccer like I do also, you have the Visit Detroit ad boards I remember seeing. I think it was a Burnley game, and I think they're also got something to do with Juventus, which are one of the most famous Italian teams. So they're obviously trying to sort of, promote it and push the boat out, mate, and sort of, get some eyeballs on the city. So they're obviously doing a good job with all things there, mate. And specifically for the track, how's it going to be looking this weekend, mate? Is there any particular sections that'll be keys to success? How are the whoops going to shape up? Is there any difference makers in your eyes there?
So the track is, this Detroit racetrack is a football field, right? It's home of the Detroit Lions. You have the long rectangular shapes. It's going to give you long rhythm sections, long straightaways. That's definitely a rider favorite because it allows for bowl berms to be built, and it doesn't have, like, a good example is, say, Anaheim is a baseball stadium, right? And you're constantly turning at really awkward angles in Anaheim, and it's really bad for passing. So when you see these racetracks that riders complain about, they feel really funky. And you can go back through the years. I've done it. I was just watching this week. Go watch 2012 Anaheim opening round. Terrible racetrack. Just the most awkward corners. No, like, rhythm to it at all. And I rode it. And it was awful. That is what Anaheim often presents. This is like the antithesis of that, where you can get everything you'd ever want. You have long loops if you want it. This track has a short start, but a lot of times you can get a long start out of it. So to me, this is the stadium shape that Supercross was meant for. So speaking on Detroit specific, short start. And if you look at it, it's interesting because both the inside and the outside are pretty difficult scenarios if you find yourself on either of those. So, like, if Tomac went to the LCQ this weekend, he would be really up against it. Like, it would be a really difficult setup for him. Where last weekend, it was one of the longest starts of the season. And yes, he got on the very inside, but he had more room. Like, he got a great jump, and then that long shoot down to the first corner allowed him to maneuver to get into good position. This weekend, if he started there, I don't know that he could, because it's such a sharp angle from the very inside and the very outside to the first corner apex. I don't think he could get there. Even with a great jump, I don't think he could get there. So that's going to put a lot of emphasis on, it's going to be one of those snowball effects. And this is European racing, European Supercross racing 101. You have to qualify in the afternoon well. You have to qualify in your heat race well. And then that gives you a good gate pick for the main event. And this tracks are so small, and the starts are so short, that if you don't get a good gate pick position wise, you're done for. Like, yeah, can you climb back into, fifth or podium or sure. But the good guys that had a smooth day and they get the good gate picks, they're going to be gone. It's going to be that type of day, maybe not to that extreme, but it will be wildly important for you to have a good gate pick in the afternoon, and then a good heat race, like execute in the heat race as well. which is going to give you like a top 5 main event gate, so you can get positioned correctly for where the best turning kind of radius is in the first corner. So that's one aspect of it. The whoops I don't think are going to be a big deal. There's only 9 of them. They typically break down. I think you'll be able to either blitz or jump or kind of hop, skip, whatever kind of rhythm you want to put through. I don't think the whoops are going to be like a pivotal kind of storyline in the race. And then, kind of as for rhythm sections, there's a couple, like there's one on the home team sideline that basically spans the length of the stadium. There will be triples in there. I wrote about it this week, and you're either going to go like a 2-3-3-2. You could go 3-3-3-2. Like there's a few different options, but tripling is going to be the name of the game. Like if you're not tripling through that rhythm section, you probably won't make the main event. The where and when do you triple will be kind of what's determined on Saturday afternoon. But all in all, decent racetrack, nothing outlandish. There's no like real like, hey, watch for this section. This is gonna mean everything. But I do think it's going to be one of those races where the start is critically important. And that's easy to say, right? Starts are always important, but I think this one even more so.
Oh, I love it, mate. Sounds like they're going to have to be on it from the off. The ones that are going to be wanting to win this race, just put them in good positions throughout the day to have a great race. So, no, excellent breakdown, mate. And we've got a bit of news that Sexton will be coming back and Ferrandis as well, which is great news. Potentially no AP there. So, have you got any light to shed on that, mate? And also, just what are the expectations? Sexton, top 5, be a fine result. He's obviously been a little bit on the bike, but, it's just great to have him back generally, isn't it, mate? Because we've had a few guys go out, and having him and Ferrandis back is really excellent.
Yeah. I do believe AP is out. I haven't seen the official PR. Maybe it's out, maybe it's not. I haven't seen it, though. But I do feel very confident in saying that AP is not racing. Chase is going to be fun. Maybe not so fun for him. We'll see. But he adds a layer of complexity to this race that we've been missing. Like we just haven't had it. He's a former champion. We know, there's a lot of layers to the Chase Sexton story, good and bad. And to not have him is a bummer. And then you couple that with not having Jet Lawrence. It's amazing now that I think about it, that we have such a great championship with so much to work through, and we're missing Chase and Jet. Like that's incredible to have a championship like this, not having those two, protagonists, like two of the biggest names in the sport, two of the best riders on the planet aren't even racing. And we still have this fantastic championship unfolding. So I'm happy to get one of them back. My expectations for him are kind of zero. I don't know. He's a great rider. So yes, I expect him to go really fast, but I don't know what that's going to turn into as a result. He hasn't been racing. I don't know where they're at on the bike. So for me to think he's going to immediately, I shouldn't say so much. He's going to immediately come in and be better than he was doesn't feel rational, other than I know how great of a rider he is. So that makes me want to think irrationally. It makes me want to think he's going to be in the fight for the podium, because that's really the only thing I know to expect from Chase Sexton. But all of the other stuff, the not racing, the crash, the time off, the not happy with the motorcycle, it's hard for me to just discount all of that and say none of that matters. Like it's irrelevant. That doesn't seem fair either, to just completely say that doesn't count, because it's been the storyline of the season. Outside of Anaheim 2, the struggles, in my mind, mentally and finding comfort with the motorcycle have been the predominant storyline, bar none. That has been the storyline for Chase in 2026. So it's hard for me to just wash that away, given the fact that he missed all the time because of a big crash, right? Like it's not like he said, you know what, we're going to take a step away. We're going to go sort things out, and we're going to come back when we feel 100% ready to go win races. That's not what this was. Maybe they're there. That would be a great kind of ripple effect of the crash. But the reason he wasn't racing is because he had a huge crash. We can't completely we can't make just that a footnote and say everything's going to be fantastic. So really long-winded way of saying I don't have expectations. I don't think expectations are fair to put upon him yet, but I'm also fascinated to see where he's at. Where is he at in this field right now? I think it's a fascinating question to watch unfold.
Yeah, can't wait to see it. It's going to be awesome to have him back, and yeah, gives that extra layer of storylines as well to what already is a fascinating season, really. And then just got some bad news that Swoll's hurt the Achilles again. Faulkner will be out. They both need surgery. Pierce Brown will be out too. So the Supercross stuff, mate, it's certainly bites at various stages throughout the season, and we just hope they have good recoveries and come back as good as they were, isn't it?
Yeah, it's brutal, man. For Swole, you're just like, you got to, it's just one of those, you got to be kidding me moments, like this kid has overcome a lot of adversity and he's going to have to overcome more. And I'm not an Achilles expert. I have, thankfully never suffered that injury, but you just wonder, is this a procedural thing, right? Is the way that they're repairing? I have no idea, right? I'm completely speaking out of turn, but if it was me, I would be wondering these things. And I'm sure he is probably wondering, like, why is this repeatedly happening? Is this just and I don't know enough to say, is the damaged tissue in a state now where it's never going to be 100%? It's always going to be a higher risk of re-injury? Maybe. Or is it, like I said, is this the way we've been repairing this is not suitable to the strain I'm going to put it under again? Is there another way to do this? I don't know. Again, I have no idea. This is not something I have any knowledge base on, but in my opinion, you have to look at every possible aspect of this now. When it's happened this much, you can't leave anything to chance anymore. You need to, like, I wouldn't care if it's the doctor you've had since you were born, surgeon wise, because the sad fact is that all racers have a surgeon that they're comfortable with. That's just part of the sport. But I would be talking to other people. It's not like I wouldn't want him involved, but I would be looking at other options. You can't just continually have an Achilles injury every year. That's not going to work. But long story short, I feel terrible for him. Pierce Brown, same thing. The collarbone, no big deal, but the dislocated wrist is that's a significant injury. That's going to require a surgery, which the surgery is not all that terrible invasive wise. They'll probably put pins in it, which are not a big deal, but the ligament damage is a big deal. Typically when you dislocate your wrist, you tear the ligaments that hold the bones on top of your hand. Those are the ones that will dislocate. Lunate bone, there's a few others. I only know that lunate bone because I dislocated that one, but they have to pin those back into place and the ligaments have to reattach and secure themselves back. They'll be pinned to the bone, but that your body has to regrow all of the attachments there. And that's typically a 3-month process. Like, before he starts riding, he can get the pins taken out a little before that. But as far as like a secure enough place to begin riding the motorcycle is probably going to be a 3-month deal. So it's, in a sea of setbacks for Pierce Brown, it's another one. It's just another rogue wave for him. And I feel awful for him.
Yeah, absolutely brutal for both those blokes. Definitely a fairly lengthy recovery ahead, so hopefully they get through it. No worries. And before we touch on some of the previewing of the racing, obviously got to get your talk on the AMA decision making with the penalty on Degan there. You don't have to go into it in too great a detail, but you're welcome to if you want, because you've probably been speaking about it all week in all your meetings and obviously podcasts and whatnot, mate. But just seems the inconsistency is what frustrates the riders, the teams, the media, kind of everyone across the sport. So probably wasn't handled as well as it could have been. A little bit of a disconnect in clarity with these decisions. So just give us your take on it, mate. It'd be great to hear.
Yeah, for Degan, I think it's the only time. Truly, I'm trying to think if there was another time. I think it's the only time I've ever felt sorry for him. Really, like in his whole life. Not that I've known him his whole life or anything, but in my dealings with him, in my watching his racing, I don't think I've ever really felt truly sorry for him. Even in Vegas, I don't want to see somebody get hurt like that. That should go without saying. But I didn't really feel sorry for him because all of that contact and interaction was self-destruction. Like he brought all that on himself. He could have rode off into the sunset and won that individual race, no problem. The reason he hurt himself was because he went looking for trouble with Shimoda. And I don't blame him for wanting to win the title, but I didn't really feel sorry for him because that was all self-induced problems, right? Like he made a decision to go make contact with Shimoda several times and then it finally bit him. So I did feel sorry for him. I don't think that this, and I understand the rule. The rule is the rule. And we collectively gave the AMA a really hard time for not enforcing the rule in Arlington. The rule said X, and they did not, subject the riders to X. So I understand that. And if the rule says this time, they're like, well, we got to do it because that's okay. I get it. And I'm not coming down on them for that. But I really, really do not believe that this infraction calls for the take away of a race win. Like, that is far too harsh of a penalty for what he did, because he basically went to remember, this on the outside of a barrier. This isn't like he shortened the track. If anything, he went further around the racetrack. And I heard, Mathis said, well, he saw that Shimoda and whoever else, Seth maybe went to the other line. So then he switched lines basically strategically. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Like, I understand. I'm not saying that he shouldn't have something wrong. Like, that's why we have these license points thing, I thought. Take a race win away. That's basically, and I know they don't think in these terms, but in practical terms, that's like a $50,000 penalty. Like, you think going around the barrier by 6 inches is worth 50 grand? And I know, again, hyperbole, they can't make decisions based off of what his bonuses are. But in real life, that's what we're talking about. Like, whether we can grade it that way or not, that's what happened to him, is he got 50 grand and a race win taken away. And, like, again, the AMA doesn't care about this, but he would have tied for the second longest streak in history. And it takes away any chance to tie Carmichael for 8. So, like, there's a lot of layers to what this cost him. Again, Hayden's done some really inadvisable things in his racing career, in my mind anyway. I don't think he cares what I think, but in my mind, he's done a lot of things that I was like, that's not it, man. Like, you can't do that. This one was one where, like, I think you did everything pretty much right. Maybe you should have gotten some sort of, I think, a penalty to make like a statement, but not punitive. You know what I mean? Like a symbolic penalty. Like, hey, don't do that again. You gotta abide by these stupid barriers that I kind of tried to make this point on the review show on Sunday. In motocross, guys run those things over for fun. Like, they don't even care at all in motocross. Like, they're not even, like, they're basically like a suggestion. They're not definitely not getting penalized for anybody going outside those things. People run them over all day long. In fact, riders hit them on purpose to knock them out of the way so then they can make a new line where the bumps aren't. I've seen this time and time again. Riders know if you hit those markers enough, they will fly off the side of the track, and then now you have a smooth line where that barrier was. So, again, this all just felt way too punitive for what mattered, and I don't blame the AMA. They're trying to do the right thing. There's no winner in this, though, and certainly not Hayden. Like, the conspiracy theorist in me, I really wonder how hard Monster Yamaha Star Racing pushed to protest this, because team-wise, it's the best thing that could have ever happened, right? Like, they don't really care if Hayden won. They still go 1-2 in the race. Cole Davies gets the win. He gets an extra 3 points on Seth and Joe, and they're all the better for it. So I would bet, and like, I'm kind of kidding, but maybe deep down, not so much, but I think somewhere somebody was like, yeah, like, push, but don't push too hard, because this is actually not that bad. Like, this is, if you really look big picture, this isn't so bad. And yeah, I didn't really think about it too much until afterwards, because things are still happening fast. We got the penalty right in the middle of the 450 main, so you're not really thinking about the repercussions of it. You're thinking 450 stuff at that time. But yeah, for Joe and Seth, this penalty really sucked for them too. Like, they're all probably like, yeah, man, this penalty's crap. Hayden should have won, like, because they're losing out points on the championship at the same time.
Oh, it's a great breakdown of it, mate. Really interesting stuff. Have you heard any conversations? The AMA going to make any amendments in the process? You heard anything on that, mate? And it was also quite humorous that Degan, he's going to lean into it on social media. He's been bringing the heat to him even more with those posts, hasn't he, mate? Always entertaining. But I guess the one sad thing was it did take away from his riding a bit, because it was absolutely exceptional, So just some words on that as well. And then obviously Degan's riding, because you were there, mate. You saw him on rails and what he did. Super impressive.
Yeah, the only fallout that I know of is I don't want to say for sure because there's no press release, but I feel very confident in saying that Ezra Lusk is stepping away from the AMA role that he had been with. Feel very confident that that was his choice. He doesn't need to do this. So this isn't something where like, man, I need a job. I'm just going to have to suffer through it. I'm speaking for him. I haven't talked to him. I just, I hear things from certain people, and I don't think he needs this drama, right? Like he doesn't need to be in the midst of this and everybody, kind of coming down, raining down, with negativity upon him and the job that they're doing. So I don't blame him 1 second, but it sounds like he's no longer going to be a part of that equation. And yeah, to your point, Hayden was unbelievable. Like that was, he got mad at me. And if like those of you listening, I'm joking, but like if you haven't noticed, it hasn't gone all that smoothly with Hayden and I over the years. Not of my doing, I don't think. Not that I wanted it to be that way, but part of my job is analysis. And if the analysis isn't super favorable, I can't help that. I got to do my job. The problem is that riders are sensitive to this type of stuff, and they don't like that. And Hayden doesn't like that. So coming into the season, I basically laid out the things I wanted to see, the things I had not seen in the past from Hayden, to show me that he was ready to go be a 450 Supercross champion in the short term. I've seen it this year. Like even though his starts weren't perfect on Saturday, it didn't even matter. He was so much better than everybody. He just blasted to them and through them without really any hesitation. And that to me was a statement win. And I'm saying he won. Like in my mind, I don't care about the points. I don't care about the money. I don't care. He won the damn race, right? Like he knows it. They know it. Everybody that was watching knows it. Hayden won that race, and it's not going to be in the record books, whatever. I don't care. He won the race in everybody's mind and hearts. And it wasn't really even close. Like those guys, like, yes, maybe they were 5 seconds back or whatever, but in real terms and like real life, they weren't even close because they had every opportunity in the world and they couldn't do anything with him. Even when he got to him, they couldn't fight back. They couldn't even stay with him. They couldn't like, hey, he's got some pace here. I'm just going to duck in and follow him here. They couldn't even do that. He was just like, nope, see ya. It was one of the most impressive races I've ever seen from Hayden, period, full stop. And that's saying a lot for a guy who's won as much as he has.
Yeah, it was absolutely supreme effort. He was completely dominant. Like you said, mate, to give him the win, he's certainly taking it as a win, I believe. So, yeah, look forward to his next race, which will be in a little bit. But I guess we've got to touch on the 450s now, mate. Obviously, Hunter getting that win, another win. Edged out Roxon. Kenny had an amazing ride, but, smashed Tomac and the rest of the competition like crazy. He was 35 seconds ahead of Tomac. So that's a nice little bit of shift in the momentum for him as well. And the consistency's there. The early laps are there, the starts. He's limiting mistakes, so there's a lot to like about Hunter's season and that particular ride. So I guess do you see him doing it again, mate? Because I think every round he's been in the top 4 and he's got 8 podiums, so it's just impressive, isn't it?
Yeah, the scary thing is that I think he has turned a corner where when he gets out front, there's no more questioning of whether he's going to win or not. I think he truly believed that he could win, going back to, like early in this championship in 2026. But until you do it, there's always going to be those demons that creep in the back of your mind saying, it's going to happen again. They're going to get me again. Because like, look at like SMX World Championship. He comes in second, does everything he possibly can do to get second. And that had been the theme, is like, do everything right, still come up a little bit short. Well, now he's won 3 out of 4 and he's done it every way imaginable, from the front, coming from the back, passing Tomac. He's done it all the ways you need to do it to establish himself and mentally to where he's like, no, I'm good. And when he gets a whole shot like he got last weekend, he gets out front early, I don't think he really fears those guys. And he knows that they're certainly capable. Like he watched Kenny close the gap down. He saw Kenny coming. But at the same time, he has a lot of mental fortitude and poise in that situation. And, I would love more time on the broadcast to kind of talk about this dynamic, because these riders, there's a little bit of a yo-yo effect that goes on. and Kenny was coming and coming and coming, and Hunter's watching him. And then like you get to a point where you got to like make a stand, and Kenny got it to like 3 seconds, and he made a big mistake on one lap, and it went back to 5 seconds. And you could see Hunter sense that, like he saw the gap expand a little bit back, and Hunter absolutely went for it for like 2 laps. He's like, if I can hold this and push it back out from here, it's over. Because the momentum where it's all moving one direction, if you can stop that positive momentum Kenny has and reverse it, the mental, and I don't really even know how to define it, but there's a mental change that goes on between them where Kenny's like, oh, that's it. Like, I'm not going to do it. Like, I got close. Hunter responded. I made a mistake. And now we're in this, like, this is just how it's going to be till the end. But there's always a moment there. And those guys are acutely aware of this in the moment where Hunter was like, all right, I got it. I just got to hold off this, assault that he's going to make here. And as soon as he sensed that mistake, man, it's like, okay, sprint with everything you got right now. And you'll hear this term in cycling a lot. They'll say like, oh, I need to break him. I got to break him right now. And that stuff mentally is so hard to overcome. It's so hard for Kenny in that moment when you go from like 2.8 was the lowest number I saw. You push it back to 5. So you essentially double that gap. And then Hunter puts in 2 heaters where you're not closing anymore. If anything, it's still at 5, maybe 5.5. It's almost impossible to regroup and then close the gap down again more. Like, I don't know why that is. There's some sort of sports psychology in there somewhere, but I've watched that for years. I've been a part of it in my own racing, but it is tried and true as far as the, just the ebb and flow of these guys and their confidence. And it's kind of like a snowball, momentum works in both directions. And it was all Kenny. One big mistake, screws up a rhythm section. Hunter regains it. His confidence comes back alive, and he's like, I'm going right now. And that was it. In the end, that was the key to the race, was that one lap that Kenny blew it, and that changed the rest of it. There was like 7 minutes left, but that was it.
Oh, summed it up perfectly, mate. Yeah, it was absolutely super impressive ride. And I guess looking at Tomac now, where does that leave him? It was a pretty rough night in general. He had the LCQ after that incident with Justin Cooper, which was quite funny after some of his comments on the, maybe we should drop the gate to 15. So that would have been quite a sort of interesting moment for him, just making sure hopefully no one saws his front end off or anything there, mate. But just had one of those bizarre nights, didn't really have the answers to be with those top 2, did he, mate? So I guess the question is, how does he bounce back, and how do you think he will bounce back, mate? He'll be ready to get a win.
Yeah, it's tough. Eli is not that transparent. If you haven't noticed, like, he doesn't just come out and tell you everything that's going on in his head. Obviously joking, but for me, the way I kind of sensed this dynamic was he was trying really hard at the beginning, and he's catching up. He got to the rear of Prado. He could see Hunter right up there, and he was kind of closing the gap down in the first couple of laps. And I was like, all right, it's on. I don't know if he can beat him, but it's going to be a race. He made a couple of mistakes. He couldn't get around Prado. And then when Kenny went by him, it got even worse. He could not stay with Kenny at all. And I think he was trying really hard to really focus on what he's doing, really hone in on what Kenny's lines were, stay with Kenny, because in that moment, as a racer, like Eli knows, if I can stay with Kenny, he's going to drag me to Hunter. Like, that is the status quo. That is the strategy in that moment. Like, if somebody goes blowing past you, one of your rivals, and you're trying to catch the leader, like, all right, that sucks. But if I go with him, whatever he's doing is better than what I'm doing. So I'm going to mimic his every move. If I can match pace with him, he's going to drag me to the front, and then we'll sort it out amongst us 3 once I get there. He couldn't, though. He couldn't stay with Kenny. Kenny's pace was just too much. Eli was making a lot of mistakes. So you don't know if that was like a bike setting where they just missed. That happens sometimes. They'll try something. Hey, the track's going to do this. That setting doesn't work. And Eli has always been kind of sensitive to that. Like, if the bike's not jiving in the main event, he's just not his best self. We haven't seen it a lot on the KTM, but historically, that has been an Eli narrative. And I truly believe that once he realized that the race for first and second was off the table, like, they're gone. It's done, right? They get out 7, 8, 10 seconds. He gauges, where is 4th place behind me? once he realizes there's no risk there, he's just cruising. Like truly, he's just cruising, because why would you take a bunch of chances to keep the lead to 12 seconds? Why are you going to? Because the guys out front are pushing. They are pushing everywhere, pushing the front, taking chances, taking risks. If you know you have nothing for them, you might as well back it down and stay safe. If you know third is all it's going to be, then why would you ever put any risk on the table? And every racer, doesn't matter what position you're in, has been in that spot where it could be, yep, I'm in 14th and 13th is just riding away from me and I can't even see who's ahead of him. But 15th is like 5 seconds back and I know I have him covered. So I'm just going to chill right here and I'm going to not crash my brains out tonight because 14th is as good as it's going to get. I think that's what it was for Eli. And yeah, 30 plus seconds looks really bad on the timing and scoring, but it was still 5 points to the lead. It doesn't matter, right? It's not the Tour de France. It doesn't matter. There's no, it's not Dakar where it really matters, because I do believe if it was like a season long time score, you would have seen a lot more effort. I was watching him closely. Once I saw Kenny kind of spit the bit as far as going for the race win, I went back and looked at Eli to kind of see, like, is he really pushing here? And this is all he had. And he was not. He was not doing that at all. So yeah, I don't think there's anything to really draw from it other than it was just an off main event. He had nothing for him. I think he knew it. And he didn't come in and throw his bike down. You could see he was frustrated. I was watching him really closely. You see he's frustrated, but I think he was just like, yep, it was going to be third. And it's, third's all we got. Having said all that, he's got to pivot this weekend. Like, he's got to be a lot better this weekend. That's all well and good. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. He's kind of getting a mulligan for losing by 30 seconds. But you have to take all that and channel the frustration, and he's got to start bringing the points back the other direction. Like, it can't go to 12 or 15 this weekend, or it would be 14, I guess. That can't happen. Like, you cannot let this start getting into double digits, because Hunter has been too rock solid. His results have been way too steady to let him get a big points lead. If this was like Sexton, and I'm not trying to pick on Chase, but Chase, his results have kind of been all over the map, I don't think you'd be as concerned. Even Webb, I don't think you'd be as concerned, because you could see Webb getting a sixth. Right now, barring a crash, it's really hard to see Hunter getting a sixth, which means it's going to take time to bring the points down. Big points gaps are really troubling when you have a guy that starts inside the top three every single race. And Ricky and James and Chad, especially Ricky, he would talk about this a lot, is when I was racing, I'm speaking in, Ricky's voice, he would say, when I was racing those two, you couldn't get off the podium. You couldn't get like a fifth or a sixth, because you knew they were always going to be on the podium. There was no weekend where those guys were going to, where Chad was going to be ninth. That was never going to happen. So I could win 6 in a row, but only had make up 15 points, 12 points over that. Like, they're just, these gaps would stay so tight. I think that is the situation with Hunter right now, because he is just, with consistency, putting himself in positions to succeed. In the end, it puts a lot of pressure on Eli. Like, it puts a lot of pressure on Eli to win. First off, like, you got to win some races, and he's got to get the points really tight. The last thing I'll say on it, I really do think that if Eli could get the points to 2 or 3, depending on who wins down the stretch going into Salt Lake, I love the setup for Eli at Salt Lake. He is insanely good in Salt Lake. And I don't know if it's the altitude or it's the dirt, or I don't know what it is. Doesn't really matter. But he is lights out good at Salt Lake. Some of the best rides I've ever seen him have in his life are at Salt Lake. So Hunter needs to keep that in the back of his mind. And you can't do anything about it other than every Saturday night. But you do not want to go to Salt Lake with Eli knowing he only has to win that race. I promise you that.
It's a great breakdown of how it is. And, in isolation, third's not too bad. But, you really got to keep banking those points, especially We don't know what Chase will look like. Jet's not coming back, so there's not going to be too many guys to get in between them, like you said, mate. So it's imperative that he gets the win. And just to finalise the 450 class, is there anything else you want to talk about? Webb had a heat race win, which was positive, and then he had that frustrating fall in the main. Mookie looked pretty fast. It was good to see him sort of showing that speed that he has. Obviously, that crash early in the season scuppered his season quite a lot. Prado showed some more positives. Jay Coop, once again, looks like he really belongs. I had that incident with Tomac like we touched on, but any of those guys you want some words on?
Yeah, I mean, for Jay Coop, I think it's, he's in a contract year, so it's really important for him to continue showing that he can be near the front. Like, that's really important because there aren't a ton of spots open. Cowie's likely to have a spot. I guess he could possibly stay where he's at, but he wants to take a step, both, mostly just pay wise. He's on factory bike, but pay wise, he wants to take a step and be one of those guys that's getting paid a lot of money. So it's really important for him to prove that he can do it consistently, which he's shown flashes of it. Great job. But I think getting a race win, if he could find a way to do that, which I know is asking a lot, but if he could find a way to do that, man, it would just, I think it would go a long way. I brought this up a few times. I have no idea if Kawasaki's interested in him or not, but to have a guy that can get on the podium compared to what they have right now would be such a massive upgrade. And I'm not taking a shot at Marchbanks, but the difference between Marchbanks and Justin Cooper right now is massive. We all see that. So that's just one to watch. It's a situation to watch. I don't know how that all plays out. And I think for Prado, it's just keep doing what you're doing. Keep, kind of stacking chips, keep getting better, keep getting good starts, and really start to hone in on the pro motocross process. We're now going to be into April after this weekend, and you can start to see motocross on the horizon like that. The proverbial horizon, the Fox Raceway sitting out there waiting on us. And when you get into April, people start talking about motocross. Like March, it's like, not so much, but April, you start to hear people riding motocross. And at some point, a lot of these guys, like the AP, the guys that are having horrific Supercross seasons, they'll throw in the towel on Supercross practice altogether. Sometime in April, they'll be like, yeah, I'll race Supercross on the weekend. Maybe I'll do 10 laps on Thursday before I fly out just to make sure I'm still sharp. But they're going to start saying, well, I really need to do something in motocross. I can't come in on the back foot in motocross after such a horrific Supercross season. That's for damn sure. So I better be over prepared for motocross. You'll start to hear those conversations happen. So I think that's where Prado's head needs to be, is kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out. But we all know that, motocross is going to be what everybody judges him on for 2026. And then I don't remember who else you mentioned, but I will say the one thing I really was optimistic about is I saw Jet Lawrence on a mountain bike today on Johnny O'Mara's birthday Instagram story. So it was a little hidden in there, right? Kind of reading the tea leaves, but him being on a mountain bike is a really big step. That's a big deal. I know he's not riding yet. I know it's not on a motorcycle, but riding a mountain bike is a huge step forward in the injury process. So yeah, the countdown of not having Jet is coming to an end. It's getting closer.
Oh, very good update, mate. Once he gets rolling, he comes back pretty quick like he did last season and has in the past. So look forward to that. More to come there for sure. And then just the 250s, mate, to close out. Who have you got for this weekend? Cole Davies, Hammaker, Shimoda. It's a pretty stacked class, that one. Obviously no Brown, but yeah, it's a pretty tight championship fight too. So it's going to be a very important round for the 250s as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And, Seth Hammaker has a horrific Detroit track record. He's gone 17-21 his other two Detroit experiences. So really needs to turn that around. One time he had a crash, another time it was food poisoning. So not necessarily his fault, but, points and championships don't care about whose fault it is. So he needs to kind of sort that out and not dwell on how poorly it's gone here in the past, and just go out and execute in the end, which I think he will. There's nothing really to that. It's just an interesting kind of stat line about how poorly it's gone here. Joe, you look at the points he's left on the table from kind of poor racecraft this year, the last lap last weekend, pass attempts earlier in the season. Like it's the Red Cross situation at Arlington, not really his fault, but he left points on the table there. Man, you would hate for this championship to come down to what could have been for Joe Shimoda. Like if you're going to lose it, if you're going to lose a championship and you're Joe, you'd almost rather just Cole Davies run off and dominate. Like what you don't want to have happen is you be sitting in the pits after the race and you lost the championship by 3 points. And you're just counting off the times that you could have done one thing differently in any of those races and been champion. That is a painful experience. That is one that will stick with you. If Davies just runs off and rips off a bunch of wins, it sucks, but you're just like, yeah, man, I just got beat. Like, it's easier to swallow in that moment than it is knowing that it just came down to one or two stupid moments where he just got it a little bit wrong. So yeah, we'll see how it all plays out, but oh man, I would hate that for Joe if it came down to one small mistake here or there that cost him being champion. I don't think it will, but you never know. The championship's really tight.
Oh, it's going to be fascinating to find out. And just lastly, mate, just a couple of MXGP thoughts from you, mate. Lucas Coonan and McClellan getting the wins. Coonan's real statement effort that ride, wasn't it, mate? Beat Hurlings by 20 seconds in race 1, got the job done in race 2, looked fast, aggressive, really on top of his game after that vision issue in Argentina scuppered him there, but he looked pumped and fired up afterwards, mate. So him and Hurlings, that battle will roll on this weekend. So just any thoughts quickly, mate?
Yeah, it was a interesting race. I talked to Davide DeCarli right after, I guess it was after the off weekend before Spain, and he was like, yeah, we hear it's going to be really sandy. And I was like, really? I did not expect, a race in Spain to be sandy. So he was right about that. And then, Lucas just did the thing, I think he has established himself, and you could say emerge, because a lot of people are still kind of catching on, but I think he's one of the best sand riders in the world now. Like he has earned that right. You look at his Lamo performances, his Finland performance in the sand, this race in the sand. I'm not saying he's better than Jeffrey or Kai. Like I'm not, but I'm saying he's one of the best sand riders in the world now. And anytime we go to a sand track, he's going to be in the mix to win. Hell, he might be in the mix to win any race we go to, period, anywhere. But I think sand gives him a little bit more of an edge than he has at some of the other tracks. And, a lot of people are, American media were kind of asking me like, hey, is it concerning for you? Like with Lucas, like, were you a little worried? I'm like, not really. No, like he was great on Saturday. He was great in one moto and then he crashed in one moto. Like, nah, I'm good. Like he's fine. I'm not worried at all. And then, this weekend obviously made me look, really smart in that aspect, but it's not going to be just a runaway every weekend. But I think Lucas Coonan is here to stay as a race winning guy. Doesn't mean he'll be champ, right? Like there's a lot that can happen. You're talking about 19 or 20 race championship, whatever it is. But if there was any doubt, and I heard this take from people, if there was any doubt about last year kind of being a one-off in a weaker field, and he wouldn't be like on that level and go win races the way, I think he dismissed that immediately, right? In round 2, he's just like, no, like, I don't know if anybody would be silly enough to say that to him, but I heard it for sure. Is like, yeah, but that was like, all he had to do was beat Febvre. And I'm like, did you not watch Switzerland last year when Febvre went out? They were going toe to toe until Geiser got hurt. Like that was your cue that he's going to be that guy. Doesn't mean he's going to win everything. Like, like lots of things can be mutually true, but it wasn't a fluke is really the point. Like this guy is the real deal, period. I think it's going to be a great championship. The one thing I would say, like the rest of the guys, there's a lot to unpack there that we don't really have time for, but I'm kind of still waiting for Geiser to show up. Like we've seen it from Jeffrey, we've seen it from Vial, we've seen it from Febvre, even though he had a huge crash in race 2. That hurt him championship wise. That's one thing he didn't do in 2025 was have that punitive DNF type crash for Febvre. But I'm still waiting for the arrival of Tim Geiser. Yes, he got on the podium in one moto, but it wasn't vintage Tim Geiser. Like this is not the guy that's going to go out and win races and get on any sort of hot streak. So, I think that the Yamaha program has been a bit behind for a long time now. And I think you're seeing a residual effect of that still carrying into 2026, even though Tim Geister is one of the best racers on the planet. I think you're seeing them still struggle on a technical level to get that bike sorted out to a place where he can go win. And I think they will. Like, I don't have any reason to think they won't. I think they made improvements. They're getting better. The results on paper are getting better. But it does make me wonder a little bit about the state of that Yamaha program, because up until really race 2, he's not looked world champion like at all so far. So yeah, it's a fascinating series. I love that we have so many great guys to talk about, because last year was kind of 2 guys and then like some also rans that got in the mix at times. But right now their storylines abound. Jeffrey is going to be fantastic. I think, I don't know that Switzerland will be the best race for him. We'll see. We haven't seen him ride full hard pack on that Honda yet. But I think given these different conditions, we're going to learn a lot about these guys. I think Vial will be really good. I think Lucas will be good. He was great here last year. Does the main question, and I'll stop with this, the main question I have is, does the harder racetrack bring Tim back to the forefront? We haven't seen it yet. Haven't seen him give us anywhere near his best stuff. But also we haven't been on racetracks that favor Tim Geister either. So that's what I'll be looking for. Can the racetrack conditions that favor Tim's skill set bring him back to the front? If it can't, if he's still 3rd to 8th and not on the pace, I will be concerned.
Absolutely, mate. It's going to be an epic weekend of racing across the globe for sure. And thanks again for joining us on this one, mate. Been another cracking podcast. We could have definitely gone longer on this one, talking about a host of topics, but no, that was excellent, mate. Massive shout out to Fly Racing and Firepower for supporting this podcast as well. Huge shout out to the listeners as well for all their support. So really appreciate that. But that's been the latest Live Motocross podcast with Jason Thomas. All the best for the weekend, mate. And hopefully it's a good one for you.
Absolutely. Sounds good. Thanks, Ed.
No worries, mate. Have a good one.